Well, happy Saturday, folks. The real Captain Kirk here. We're live from One Bethlehem Plaza here in downtown Bethlehem here today. It's a pretty typical day, actually. 21 this morning, going up to about 42. That's about what would you expect this time of year. So hope you're having a great Valentine's Day, President's Day weekend here. Again, a lot to cover here today. Again, the meteorologists say spring is going to be here in 15 days, and the sun says 35 days. We're only in 49 days here, and we'll talk about that why in a minute here. But we'll be speaking at the here in New York City here at the Alternative Data Conference. It's Eagle Alpha Conference, A-team group. Again, speaking around 9:30 in the morning about our predictive analytics for equity performance and predicting those a year ahead. So speaking of year ahead, again, thought we'd ask our robots here again. I always like, human intelligence is a little smarter than the AI intelligence, but it does help consolidate. Again, things we can do today with AI obviously can consolidate everything we do and summarize it pretty quickly here. So this is our 5-week retail March, which is 1 March through 4 April. Again, I just asked what's the weather trends going to do. And so categories are doing well. This ought to give you a hint. Fire logs, wiper blades, lightweight outerwear, meaning jackets. Categories not doing so great. Fans, sprinklers, garden, downside. So we're projecting here, at least in the Northeast, the coldest in 7 years, snowiest in 8 years. Nationally, cold is almost that much. Snowy for sure here. So if we look at the garden index here, we'll be talking about that at the Eagle Alpha conference here. Worst in 13 years. It's a really negative index here. If we look at the best category to be fire logs, right, you're still going to be chilly, snowy. You're probably about the best in 13 years for their sales. And if we pick an equity, obviously going to be colder, snowier, we'd pick First Energy. Again, best in 9 years. So the report above is something clients have had for over a year. So again, it sounds crazy, but that's what we do with predictive analytics. A little more robust than the NOAA National Weather Service. Don't like to pick on folks, but again, this is pretty weak. This is February. Their February forecast issued 1 day in advance. When you're talking 33 to 50% chance, right, I can argue 50% chance it does the other thing, right? So not very much good skill here, and unfortunately it does a little bit of a disservice to the weather industry here. Again, this is NOAA's, orange line is their month ahead outlook, and the blue lines are a year ahead outlook. So they always give us a year head start, and we still outperform about 85 on temps and 86% of the time on precip over the last 15, 20 years. The reason we know that, we can look at this polar vortex here, you can kind of see it here. It gets weak, and weak is not good, right? It allows the cold that's normally bottled up at the North Pole to move all around, and this is a full-on onslaught. This is not just appears to be a glancing shot. This looks like to be a big chunk heading our way here toward the end of the month into March again. So again, just think of it as a big tornado. Again, keeping all that cold air at the North Pole if it's really strong, but when it's weak and ragged like this, it heads our way. So here it comes. Looking at last week world summer here, not talking cold right now. Again, we're getting a break, obviously, with this February thaw here, finally. 8.9 warmer than last year, warmest in 3 years, 5th warmest in 41 years nationally. So big map here is trends versus last year. Snowfall down about 86%, least in 3 years, 3rd least in 41 years. Rainfall down 79%, driest in 4, 6th driest in 41. So warm, dry, less snow, awesome for store traffic. Good timing here, began before the Valentine's Day weekend. So again, it was good news. Retailers definitely needed this after some very, very soft store traffic sales trends at the end of January, beginning of February. Look at other parts of UK, pretty wet, and the fact of Europe, really wet. Number 1 wettest in 41 years, and continued wet down under in Brazil and Australia again. So maps since it left are the trends versus average. Flu is kind of flatlined here. Again, it's upticked a little bit from last week. Again, still way down from the secondary spike that we had last year. We still think you're going to see this maybe get to another little bit of a spike here. So I don't think it's going to be a complete collapse from here, but at least for now, we're down about 41% versus a year ago and way down from our peak back in late December. Look at season day snowfall here again across the U.S. Again, we're still up 14%. Again, if the West had just had some snow, and I know that looks like a lot, but that's the least in 41 years in the West, least in 41 years in the North Rocky Mountains, least in 8 years in the Southern Rockies. If they weren't that extreme, these numbers would be quite a bit bigger. But overall, up 14% nationally, most in 5 years. Still about 9% below average. So again, East Coast, again, most in 12 years. So don't tell us about no snow because we've had a lot. Look at the 32-degree index again since about tracking since August. Again, most in 5 years, 13th least in 41. So below average, but again, the most in 5 years, up 4%. Snowy weeks here again took a little bit of a lull here. Bars are the trends versus last year. The dotted the blue line here is actually a U.S. population snow index. So a little bit of a dip here this Valentine's Day week, and then an uptick next week, even though it won't be quite as much as last year. And then maybe a snowier pattern here, we believe, going all the way through March here with quite a bit snowier weeks, week after week across the U.S. Look at this week, the week of President's Day here on Monday here again in the U.S. Again, whopping change, 18.5 warmer than last year's frigid conditions. Last year was a top 2 cold, so we're up huge. Amazing the change, right? Going from near record cold last year to number 1 warmest in 41 years. Snowfall down a bit from last year. It was also very snowy this week last year, so now down 22%. Still 12th most, above average nationally. Again, getting some heavy snow finally across the west. They need it, and across the northern tier. Rainfall also up 42%, wettest in 5 years, 11th wettest, so above average on that front. So again, snow and rain, again, kind of stormy is half the equation. We like to see warm and dry weather for stronger store traffic, retail sales. So yeah, it's warm, but it's also quite stormy, and that'll be a theme here as we go through the spring, especially summer, fall timeframe. We do actually think the El Nino will kick in here, and we're going to get quite wet after many years here of just dry to drought phases across much of the U.S. Look at snowfall here today. There's a little system here we have to watch. Again, models are all over the place. I've watched the Euros predict 13 inches here in Bethlehem, and the GFS say nothing, and then the GFS flips back to 2-3. There's a question mark here for Sunday night, Monday, for sure. Again, could be a surprise hit here. Again, Jersey Shore. We'll see. Again, but system just moving off the coast here. Tuesday, again, heavy snow in the west. Wednesday, heavy snow in the west. Some of that, look at this, a little bit of a inkling of colder trends coming into the upper plains here. So Thursday is going to be kind of a Chicago go from their 60s to 30s pretty quickly behind this front. We aggregate the 6-day totals here, again, about 50% less than last year. Still 16th most and about a hair above average, and snow for about 46% of the U.S. So even though it's mild, we're still getting some snow out there. Looking next week, the last week of February here, week ending the 28th, colder trends now. So 5.1 cold in last year, colds in 4 years. Still above average, but you're starting to see the inkling of that glancing shot here, the polar vortex. It should become a full onslaught here, diving into the plains, central U.S., east, as we go into that first week of March. But so you see signs of it coming in here for sure. Snowfall up 383%, most in 3 years. Still a bit below average. Rainfall way up, 240%. 247% wetter than last year. Wettest in 32 years. Third wettest in 40 years, 21 years. So this is, again, sign of things to come here. So this is kind of stormy pattern, colder. Again, not good for spring seasonal sales as we outlined earlier. If we aggregate the 2-week trends here, and I got to be careful because we got these really warms, then becoming colder. But you can see the big blob. It's kind of called a cross-polar vortex flow. It goes across Siberia, the North Pole, heads right into Alaska, Canada, and then heads our way under this kind of blocking pattern. So again, here it comes. Again, get ready for the late Feb, early March. Look at the stormy precip pattern here, snow and rain. Again, it's heavy. Brazil, very, very wet. Good for their crops. Their next safrana crop's going to be going on the ground pretty soon here. So again, pretty strong yields down there with all this rain. This is breaking almost a decade of drier weather for sure down under. That'll be the theme in the U.S. here too as we get into the 2026 season. So folks, don't forget you can get this blog video in your inbox via email every Saturday afternoon as we issue it here. So again, here, check it out. Again, go to weathertrends360.com/newsletter/captains-log. Subscribe. Again, it's free. With that, folks, have a great week ahead. We'll talk to you this time next week.